The FBI's 8-word secret that can end almost any conflict. Imagine this. Someone you love is standing just a few feet away from you. Their voice is getting louder. Their face is filled with frustration. You can feel your own heart beating faster with every word they say. Your mind is already searching for the perfect response. You want to explain yourself. You want to prove they're wrong. You want to defend your side of the story. But what if I told you that doing exactly that is the biggest mistake you could make? In fact, the more you try to defend yourself, the more likely the conversation is to spiral out of control. It sounds backwards. After all, if someone accuses you of something that isn't true, shouldn't you explain yourself? Most people think the answer is yes. The FBI says otherwise. For decades, FBI hostage negotiators have been trained to handle some of the most emotionally charged conversations imaginable. They're called into situations where fear, anger, and desperation have reached dangerous levels. In those moments, saying the wrong thing can make the situation worse. Over the years, they discovered something surprising. People rarely calm down because they hear the perfect argument. They calm down because they finally feel understood. That discovery led to a simple 8-word phrase that has become one of the most powerful communication tools ever used. It's so simple that most people dismiss it the first time they hear it. Yet it has helped resolve countless high-pressure conversations. And while your everyday disagreements aren't hostage situations, the human brain doesn't always know the difference. When emotions take over, people don't think logically. They react emotionally. That's why this technique works just as well during an argument with your spouse, a disagreement with a friend, tension with a coworker, or even a heated conversation with a complete stranger. Here's the phrase. It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now. 8 simple words. No clever comeback, no debate, no attempt to prove you're right. Just a calm observation. At first, it almost sounds too easy. How could one sentence change the direction of a conversation? To understand why, you first have to understand what happens inside the brain during conflict. Imagine your brain is equipped with an alarm system. Thousands of years ago, that alarm helped our ancestors survive predators and danger. Today, that same alarm can be triggered by something as simple as criticism. The moment someone raises their voice or challenges us, our brain begins preparing for a threat. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing becomes shallow. Stress hormones flood your body. Without realizing it, your attention shifts away from listening and toward protecting yourself. You stop trying to understand. You start trying to win. The other person experiences the exact same reaction. Now 2 people are having completely different conversations. Neither person is listening. Both people are building a case. Every sentence becomes another piece of evidence. Every interruption feels like another attack. Every misunderstanding adds fuel to the fire. This is why so many conflicts seem impossible to solve. They're no longer about the original problem. They're about survival. Think about the last major disagreement you had. Maybe it started over something small, a forgotten promise, a late reply, an unpaid bill, a careless comment. Within minutes, the conversation probably wasn't about that issue anymore. Suddenly, someone says, "You never listen. You always do this. You don't care." Now the discussion has shifted. Instead of solving one problem, both people begin defending their entire character. That's when communication breaks down. Here's something most people never realize. When someone says, "You never listen to me," they're rarely asking you to prove that you listened yesterday. They're expressing an emotion. They feel ignored. They feel unimportant. They feel unseen. But instead of responding to the emotion, most people respond to the accusation. They immediately say, "That's not true. I do listen. You're exaggerating." Those responses might be factually correct, but emotionally they miss the point completely. Imagine someone drowning in deep water. Would you start explaining the science of swimming? Of course not. First, you help them feel safe. Only then can they hear what you're trying to teach. Human emotions work the same way. People don't become open to logic until they no longer feel emotionally threatened. That's why the FBI's approach is so different. Instead of fighting emotions, they acknowledge them. Instead of correcting people, they connect with them. That tiny shift changes everything. When someone hears, "It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now," their brain receives a completely different message. Instead of hearing, "I'm against you," they begin hearing, "I'm trying to understand you." And that's often enough to lower their emotional defenses. But here's where things get really interesting. Most people accidentally destroy the power of this technique within seconds. They say, "It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now, but let me explain." That single word, "but," it quietly erases everything that came before it. The other person's brain immediately prepares for another fight. Instead of feeling heard, they feel interrupted. Instead of feeling understood, they feel dismissed. One word is enough to undo everything. So what should you do instead? That's where the real secret begins. The real secret isn't just the 8 words. It's what you do after you say them. Most people think communication is about saying the right thing. In reality, it's often about knowing when to stop talking. That sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest skills to master. Imagine you've just said, "It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now." What happens next? If you're like most people, you'll immediately feel uncomfortable. Your brain will tell you to keep talking. You'll want to explain yourself. You'll want to fix the misunderstanding. You'll want to prove your intentions were good. So you might say, "I didn't mean it that way. I was just trying to help. You misunderstood what I meant." The problem is that the other person's brain isn't ready to hear any of that yet. They're still processing their own emotions. Every extra sentence you add becomes another opportunity for them to feel challenged. That's why experienced negotiators do something that feels almost impossible. They stay quiet. They allow silence to do the work. Silence makes most people nervous, We rush to fill empty space because we think silence means the conversation is failing. But silence often means the opposite. Silence gives the other person permission to think instead of react. For the first time, they don't have to interrupt. They don't have to defend themselves. They don't have to compete to be heard. They simply speak. And something remarkable begins to happen. Their voice usually becomes softer. Their breathing slows. Their body relaxes. Not because you've solved the problem, but because you've removed the feeling that they're fighting alone. There's a reason therapists spend so much time listening instead of talking. People often solve their own problems once they feel safe enough to express them. The same principle works in everyday conversations. Think about a child who's crying after falling off a bicycle. Imagine saying, "You're fine, stop crying." Those words rarely help. Now imagine kneeling beside them and saying, "That really scared you, didn't it?" Nothing about the injury has changed, but everything about the emotional experience has. The child feels understood, and that's where healing begins. Adults aren't much different. We simply hide our emotions behind different words. Instead of saying, "I'm scared," we say, "You never support me." Instead of saying, "I feel unimportant," we say, "You only care about yourself." Instead of saying, "I'm hurt," we express anger. Psychologists sometimes describe anger as a secondary emotion. It's often covering something deeper. Fear, shame, disappointment, loneliness, embarrassment. If you only respond to the anger, you'll miss what's really happening. But if you recognize the emotion underneath, the entire conversation changes. Imagine your spouse walks through the door after a difficult day. They immediately complain that the house is a mess. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself. "I've been busy all day. You could have cleaned too. You always complain." Now the conversation becomes a competition. Who worked harder? Who's more tired? Who's right? Nobody wins. Instead, imagine saying, "It sounds like you've had a really stressful day." Notice what happened. You didn't admit the house was your responsibility. You didn't say they were right. You simply recognized what they were feeling. That one sentence often changes the direction of the conversation. Because people don't always need agreement. They need understanding. The same thing happens at work. Imagine your manager walks into your office looking frustrated. They say, "This project isn't what I expected." Your heart immediately starts racing. You begin preparing your defense. But instead of arguing, you say, "It sounds like you're disappointed with the results." Now your manager feels heard. Instead of defending yourself, you've opened the door to solving the problem together. The conversation shifts from blame to cooperation. Here's another example. Two close friends make plans to meet. One of them arrives 40 minutes late. The other says, "You clearly don't respect my time." The late friend instantly replies, "Traffic was terrible. I couldn't help it. I even texted you." Now they're arguing about traffic. But traffic was never the real issue. The real issue was feeling unimportant. Imagine a different response. It sounds like you felt like I didn't value your time. That response reaches the real problem. And when the real problem is acknowledged, the conversation becomes much easier. This technique works because every human being shares one powerful emotional need: the need to feel seen. We all want someone to recognize our experiences without immediately judging them, without interrupting, without correcting us. Think about the people you trust most in your life. Chances are they aren't the smartest people you know. They aren't the funniest. They aren't always the ones with the best advice. They're the people who make you feel understood. That's why you feel safe around them. Safety creates trust. Trust creates openness. And openness creates meaningful conversations. The FBI didn't discover a magic phrase. They discovered a timeless truth about human nature. People don't resist logic because they're stubborn. They resist logic because they're overwhelmed by emotion. Once those emotions settle, something incredible happens. People become willing to listen. But there's one final lesson that makes this technique even more powerful. And it's the reason some relationships grow stronger after conflict, while others slowly fall apart. The final lesson has nothing to do with the 8 words themselves. It has everything to do with what happens after the conversation ends. Most people believe healthy relationships are built by avoiding conflict. They're not. Every strong relationship experiences disagreement. Every marriage, every friendship, every family, every successful team. Conflict isn't the problem. The way people handle conflict is. Think about the strongest relationship in your life. It probably isn't strong because you've never argued. It's strong because you found a way back to each other after the disagreement. That's the difference. Healthy relationships don't avoid storms. They learn how to navigate through them. Unfortunately, most people are never taught how. Instead, they grow up believing that winning an argument means they've succeeded. But what exactly have you won? If your spouse walks away feeling hurt, did you really win? If your child stops talking because they feel misunderstood, did you really solve anything? If your friend apologizes simply to end the conversation while resentment continues growing inside, was that victory? Probably not. The truth is, every conflict creates a choice. You can protect your ego, or you can protect your relationship. Very few people manage to do both. That's why emotionally intelligent people ask themselves a different question. Instead of asking, "How do I prove I'm right?" they ask, "How do I make this person feel safe enough to tell me what's really wrong?" That single shift changes everything. Because beneath almost every heated conversation lies an emotion that hasn't been expressed honestly. Sometimes it's fear, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough, fear of being rejected. Sometimes it's sadness, sometimes disappointment, sometimes loneliness. But those emotions rarely appear first. Instead, they hide behind anger. And if you only respond to the anger, you'll spend your entire life fighting symptoms instead of solving problems. That's why the FBI's communication strategy works so well. It doesn't attack the surface. It reaches the emotion underneath. The 8-word phrase isn't magic. It's permission. Permission for another person to stop defending themselves. Permission to lower their emotional walls. permission to feel understood. And once that happens, real conversations become possible. But there's one more habit that separates great communicators from everyone else: curiosity. When the other person begins talking again, don't interrupt. Don't search for flaws in their story. Don't mentally prepare your next response. Be curious. Ask simple questions. What made you feel that way? Can you help me understand? What happened from your perspective? Those questions do something powerful. They tell the other person, your experience matters. And when people feel their experience matters, they become far more willing to hear yours. Communication isn't about taking turns speaking. It's about building understanding. Imagine how different your relationships would become if every disagreement ended with both people understanding each other a little better than before. Imagine how many friendships could be saved, how many family relationships could heal, how many marriages could become stronger. Not because people stopped disagreeing, but because they stopped treating each other like enemies. The next time someone raises their voice, remember this: your first instinct will probably be to defend yourself. Ignore it. Take one slow breath. Look at the person in front of you. Remember that beneath their frustration is another emotion waiting to be understood. Then calmly say, "It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now." And stop. Don't rush to explain. Don't argue. Don't interrupt the silence. Let the moment breathe. You may be surprised by what happens next. Sometimes the loudest voice becomes the quietest. Sometimes anger turns into honesty. Sometimes tears replace shouting. Sometimes people reveal what they were really trying to say all along. Not every conflict will disappear. Not every conversation will end perfectly. Some disagreements are too deep. Some relationships have wounds that take time to heal. This isn't a magic spell. It's a communication tool. But even when it doesn't solve everything, it often creates something just as valuable: a chance. A chance to understand instead of assume. A chance to connect instead of compete. A chance to solve the real problem instead of fighting over the surface. The strongest people aren't those who always have the perfect comeback. They're the ones who know that kindness is often more powerful than cleverness, that listening can be stronger than speaking, and that making someone feel heard is one of the greatest gifts you can give another human being. The next time life puts you in a difficult conversation, remember this lesson. Don't focus on winning. Focus on understanding. Because people rarely remember every word you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. If this video changed the way you think about communication, make sure you subscribe for more videos on psychology, human behavior, and practical life lessons that can genuinely improve your relationships. If you made it all the way to the end, I have one small challenge for you. The next time someone is upset with you, resist the urge to defend yourself. Try the 8-word phrase. See what happens. Then come back to this video and share your experience in the comments. Type the word "understood" if you're willing to give it a try. You never know. One conversation, one moment of patience, and 8 simple words could change a relationship forever.